The great scrapyard of Port Xylos orbited a dying star, a vast, glittering junkyard where the dreams of a dozen species came to rust. Ships that had once plied the hyperlanes, vessels that had carried colonists to new worlds, and warships that had held the line in forgotten conflicts all ended up here, their metal bones picked clean by salvagers and their memories lost to the indifferent vacuum. It was here, amidst the cosmic refuse, that Kalen made his living. He wasn't a salvager who ripped out valuable components for a quick profit. He was an archivist, a practitioner of a dying art. He restored old technology, believing that the past held lessons the galaxy, in its frantic rush for the future, had forgotten. To the powerful Zenton corporations that ran the port, Kalen was a joke, a nostalgic fool playing with worthless toys. Today was the grand auction, the biannual event where the most promising wrecks were sold off to the highest bidder. Kalen stood at the back of the observation dome, a small, unassuming human in a crowd of towering, multi-limbed beings. He watched as sleek corporate vessels and powerful warships were sold for millions of credits. His own account held just enough for one final, desperate purchase. The last lot of the day was presented, and a wave of derisive laughter rippled through the auction house. Lot 734. It was a small, ovoid craft of unknown origin, its hull a smooth, seamless shell of matte black material. It had been found drifting in deep space decades ago. Every top engineer from every major species had studied it. Their conclusion was unanimous: it was a solid, inert lump. It had no seams, no engines, no power source, no radiation signature. It was a piece of cosmic art, perhaps, but it was utterly useless. "We'll start the bidding at 100 credits for the exotic materials," the auctioneer droned, the statement itself a punchline. The Zenton administrator, a portly being named Xyler, chuckled from his VIP box. 100 credits is too generous for a paperweight. I'll offer 50, for the humor of it. More laughter. Kalen felt a familiar sting of anger. He had been studying the scans of Lot 734 for weeks. He saw something no one else did. He saw a design philosophy that was not mechanical, but biological. He saw a quiet perfection that they mistook for simplicity. He activated his bid panel. 1,000 credits, he submitted. A hush fell over the crowd. 1,000 credits for the port's most famous piece of junk was madness. Xyler turned his large, multifaceted eyes toward Kalen, a look of pitying amusement on his face. The human archivist wishes to buy the rock. Let him have it. Perhaps he can use it as a tombstone for his dead profession. The gavel fell. The ship was his. As Kalen arranged for the small, silent craft to be towed to his workshop in the station's lowest, most forgotten level, the whispers and chuckles followed him. He was a fool who had just bankrupted himself for a worthless sculpture. But as he watched the ovoid ship drift slowly toward his cluttered dock, Kalen felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. He was haunted by the memory of his mentor, an old man who had been ridiculed for his belief that some machines had a soul, that they responded to respect and empathy. "Listen to the silence, Kalen," he used to say. "That's where the real conversations happen." Kalen was about to have a very long, very quiet conversation. He didn't know what the ship's secret was, but he knew, with an unshakable certainty, that the entire galaxy was wrong about it. And he, the forgotten man in the forgotten corner of the station, was the only one who was willing to listen. Kalen's workshop was a chaotic sanctuary of forgotten technology. Ancient consoles flickered with restored code, mechanical limbs from obsolete androids hung from the ceiling, and the air smelled of ozone, hot metal, and the solvent he used to clean corroded circuits. It was a museum of progress, a testament to his belief that nothing was ever truly useless. The alien craft, once towed into his largest bay, dominated the space. It was beautiful in its stark simplicity, a perfect, dark egg resting on a docking cradle. It seemed to absorb the light, its surface revealing no texture, no detail. It was a void given form. For the first week, he did nothing but clean it. He didn't use harsh abrasives or plasma torches. He used soft cloths and a gentle, ionized mist, slowly wiping away the accumulated grime of its long journey through the void. It was an act of respect, a greeting. The other mechanics who worked on his level would stop by, drawn by the spectacle. Still polishing the rock, Kalen, one would jeer. Maybe you'll find a genie inside. Kalen would just smile and continue his work. He was performing a ritual his mentor had taught him. To understand a machine, you must first know its physical form, its scars, its history. He was learning the craft, not as an object, but as a being. While he cleaned, he ran his most sensitive, non-invasive scans. The results were baffling. The ship's hull was a single, seamless molecule, a complex carbon lattice that should have been impossible to create. The interior was a dense, intricate matrix that looked more like a neural network than a ship's superstructure. And there was no power source. Not a flicker of energy. It was, by all known laws of physics, completely and utterly dead. Yet, Kalen felt a presence. It was a feeling, a subtle resonance in the air around the ship, a sense of immense, patient stillness. He was reminded of his mentor's most controversial theory, empathetic resonance. The idea that certain advanced technologies, particularly those of a biological or crystalline nature, were designed to interface directly with a user's consciousness, responding not to mechanical input, but to emotion and intent. It had been laughed out of every scientific journal in the sector. It had ruined his mentor's career. As he worked, he talked to the ship. He told it about his day, about the ridiculous regulations of the Port Authority, about his mentor, about his own loneliness in a galaxy that valued disposability over permanence. He knew it was strange, a man talking to a silent, black void, but it felt right. He was introducing himself. During his scans, he found it, a microscopic pattern etched into the hole near the ship's equator. It wasn't writing. It was a complex diagram of interconnected nodes, a circuit board drawn at a molecular level. It was the only feature on the entire seamless surface. He knew this had to be the key. He decided to test his mentor's theory. He spent the next 3 days modifying an old neural interface helmet, reversing its polarity so that instead of reading brainwaves, it would project them as a low-frequency, resonant field. It was a delicate, dangerous process. A miscalculation could turn his brain into scrambled eggs. He placed the helmet on his head, took a deep breath, and stood before the ship. He focused his thoughts, not on commands like open or activate, but on feelings. He projected a sense of peaceful curiosity, of a profound desire to understand, of an offer of help. He projected respect. For hours, he stood there, a silent vigil, sending a stream of his own consciousness towards the inert craft. Nothing happened. The ship remained dark, silent. The silence was his only reply. Disheartened, he was about to give up when he remembered his mentor's last words to him. "Don't just knock on the door, Kalen. You have to show them your heart." He had been holding back, projecting a curated, intellectual curiosity. He hadn't shown it the truth. He took another deep breath and focused again. This time, he opened his mind completely. He let the ship feel his grief over his mentor's death, his frustration with a galaxy that had discarded them both, his deep, aching loneliness. He showed it the small, flickering flame of hope that made him by this ship, the hope that he wasn't crazy, that beauty and purpose could still be found in the things the universe had thrown away. He showed it his heart. And the ship, for the first time in millennia, began to glow. The light started as a faint, internal luminescence, a soft, white glow that seemed to emanate from the very heart of the ovoid craft. The molecular etching on its surface began to shine, the intricate patterns tracing a path of brilliant blue energy. The low hum that had been a barely perceptible vibration in the deck plates now filled the workshop, a pure, resonant tone that was not just heard but felt, a chord of immense power and profound peace. Kalen watched, his breath caught in his throat, as the section of the hull before him grew translucent. The solid, black material became as fluid as smoke, swirling and parting to form a perfect, circular opening. The ancient secret was inviting him in. He removed the neural helmet, his hands trembling slightly, and stepped across the threshold. The interior was not a cockpit or a bridge, but a single, vast, spherical chamber. The walls were alive with the same soft, white light, and the air was warm and still. In the center of the chamber, a crystalline structure pulsed with a gentle, rhythmic light, the source of the ship's energy and, he suspected, its consciousness. He had 1,000 questions, but before he could even form a thought, a voice filled his mind. It was a voice made of pure thought, a symphony of ideas and emotions that his brain translated into a semblance of language. Greetings, Archivist. Kalen stumbled back a step, stunned by the clarity of the contact. What are you? He projected, his own thoughts clumsy and loud in this new, silent form of communication. I am a weaver. This vessel is my loom. My purpose is to find and connect. The weaver showed him. It flooded his mind with images and feelings, a story that spanned 1,000,000 years. It was a member of a civilization that had transcended physical form, becoming beings of pure consciousness and energy. They had seen the chaos of the galaxy, the wars, the greed, the fear that drove species to isolate themselves or destroy one another. They had created the weavers as an answer. The ships were not vessels for travel in the conventional sense. They were mobile nodes, sentient embassies designed to find compatible species and connect them into a pattern, a galactic network of shared consciousness, a web of empathy and understanding. The pattern didn't erase individuality, it enhanced it, allowing species to share knowledge, culture, and emotion directly, to understand each other on a fundamental level, making conflict obsolete. This vessel was damaged in a cosmic storm long ago, the weaver explained. My connection to the pattern was severed. I entered a dormant state, my systems healing, waiting for a consciousness that could resonate with my core purpose. I have waited a long time, Archivist. Why me? Kalen asked, overwhelmed. Others have tried to interface. Engineers, scientists, soldiers, the weaver showed him images of other species prodding and scanning its hull. They saw a machine. They sought to understand my function, to control my systems. They spoke in the language of logic and force. You are the first in an age to speak in the language of the heart. You saw a being in need of help. You offered connection, not demand. You are an archivist, not of things, but of meaning. You are compatible. The revelation was a tectonic shift in Kalen's understanding of his own life. His obsession with old things, his empathy for forgotten machines, the very traits that had made him an outcast, were the qualities the weaver had been searching for. His greatest perceived weakness was his most profound strength. As he absorbed this new reality, the weaver showed him something else. The ship's awakening, the burst of psychic energy as it connected with his mind, had not gone unnoticed. It showed him an image of the station, a ripple of calm and confusion spreading through its inhabitants. Then it showed him a Zenthan warship, detaching from the main hub, its engines flaring as it headed towards his sector. They felt my awakening, the weaver communicated, a feeling of concern in its tone. But they did not feel it as you did. They felt a surge of power. And they are coming to claim it. Kalen's brief moment of awe was shattered by the cold reality of the threat. Xyler and the corporation didn't just want his workshop anymore. They wanted the living god that had just woken up inside it. The Zenthan security cruiser, the corporate mandate, was a symbol of Xyler's philosophy, brutal, efficient, and utterly lacking in grace. It sliced through the asteroid field, its weapon ports open, a clear message of intimidation. On its bridge, Xyler stared at the energy readings coming from Kalen's dock. The power signature was off the charts, but it was smooth, stable, unlike any known technology. It was elegant, and that made him furious. Anything he couldn't understand, he had to possess. Open a channel to the archivist, he commanded. Kalen's face appeared on the main screen. He was no longer the weary, grease-stained mechanic Xyler remembered. He stood in the glowing, white interior of the alien craft, his expression calm and unyielding. Kalen, Xyler began, dispensing with any pretense of politeness. You are in possession of an unregistered, high-energy artifact. Under the Port Xylos Commerce Treaty, it is now the property of the governing authority. You will surrender the device immediately. This device is a sentient being, Kalen replied, his voice even. And it is not your property. It is my guest. You are not welcome here, Xyler. Xyler's face contorted in a sneer. You think your little light show impresses me, human. I have a squad of psychic-dampened enforcers ready to board your workshop. They will take the ship, and you will be placed in a corporate re-education facility for the rest of your sad, nostalgic life. This is your only warning. The channel closed. Kalen turned his thoughts to the Weaver. They're coming. They have technology to block your abilities. Their dampeners can shield their own minds from direct contact, the Weaver communicated. But they cannot shield their perceptions of reality. And they cannot shield their machines. Kalen felt a grim smile touch his lips. His mentor had always said that the best way to defeat a bully was to make them look foolish. He and the Weaver had no weapons, but they had a far more powerful arsenal, imagination. The security squad breached the workshop with an explosive charge, their armored forms storming into the large bay. They found the alien craft, glowing softly, and Kalen standing before it, unarmed. Surrender, Archivist, the squad leader bellowed. Kalen simply stood his ground. You are trespassing, he said calmly. As the soldiers advanced, the workshop around them began to change. The piles of scrap metal and old machinery seemed to shift and writhe in the corners of their vision. The deck plates beneath their feet felt soft, unstable. The air grew thick with a chorus of whispers that seemed to echo their own deepest fears. One soldier saw the walls begin to crumble, revealing the cold, hard vacuum of space. Another saw the shadows coalesce into the form of a predator from his home world. Their tactical displays filled with gibberish, their comms with static. The Weaver wasn't creating a physical threat, it was rewriting their sensory input, turning their own minds against them. It was a masterful, non-violent defense. The soldiers, trained for combat but not for psychological warfare, fell into disarray, firing their weapons at phantoms, shouting at enemies that only they could see. On the bridge of the corporate mandate, Xyler watched his elite squad's biometric readings spike into the red. They were panicking, their heart rates and adrenaline levels through the roof. What is he doing to them? He snarled. He was too arrogant to admit fear, but he was beginning to feel it. The Weaver was toying with his soldiers, disarming them without laying a single metaphorical finger on them. He decided he would have to deal with this himself. He possessed a personal, military-grade psychic shield, a device that made him immune to mental intrusion. He would march in there and take the ship by force. He left his bridge and took a shuttle to the workshop, his own determination a cold, hard knot in his gut. He would not be denied. Xyler stormed into the workshop, the emitters on his personal shield whining with power. The chaotic illusions that had broken his soldiers had no effect on him. He saw the bay as it was, cluttered, filled with his terrified, disoriented enforcers, and at the center, the glowing ship and the defiant human. He drew his energy pistol and leveled it at Kalen. It's over, Archivist, he declared, his voice ringing with triumph. Your tricks don't work on me. Now, step away from the ship. Kalen didn't move. He simply looked at Xyler, his expression not of fear, but of pity. It was never about tricks, Xyler. It was about understanding. A concept you seem to be immune to. Enraged, Xyler fired. The bolt of energy shot towards Kalen, but just before it reached him, it hit an invisible wall and dissipated into a harmless shower of sparks. A simple kinetic field, the Weaver communicated in Kalen's mind. Child's play. Xyler fired again and again, his shots fizzling out against the unseen barrier. He was like a child throwing stones at a fortress. His technological superiority meant nothing here. Finally, his weapon spent, he lunged forward, his greed overriding his reason. He pulled out a corporate data spike, a vicious-looking device designed to forcibly extract information from a system's core. He was going to plug it directly into the ship's hull. If I can't have it, he screamed, no one will. Don't. Kalen warned. You don't know what you're doing. But Xyler was beyond listening. He slammed the spike against the glowing hull. The moment the device made contact, the ship's gentle hum stopped. The soft, white light in the chamber turned a brilliant, piercing crimson. The weaver had been patient. It had been gentle. But this was an act of violation, a physical assault on its very being. It reacted. It did not project an illusion. It did not create a barrier. It reached out and touched Zyler's mind, not with a gentle probe, but with a flood. It bypassed his shield as if it were tissue paper. And it showed him the truth. It didn't show him illusions of his fears, it showed him the reality of his own actions, amplified 1,000-fold. It made him feel the fear of his soldiers, the terror of the beings his corporation had displaced, the quiet desperation of the poor and the forgotten living in the station's underbelly. And then, it shared with him the weaver's own experience, the cosmic loneliness, the pain of its ancient wound, the deep, abiding hope for connection. For one eternal second, Zyler, the being who had built his life on a foundation of callous indifference, was forced to feel the unfiltered empathy of a god. The psychic feedback was a tsunami that shattered his consciousness. He screamed, a raw, animal sound of pure agony, and collapsed to the floor, the data spike clattering from his nerveless fingers. He was not physically harmed. But the arrogant, cruel Zintan administrator was gone, his mind irrevocably broken and rebuilt by a single, overwhelming moment of forced understanding. The crimson light in the ship faded back to a soft, calming white. The security enforcers, their illusions gone, stared at their fallen leader, then at Kalen and the silent, powerful ship. Their will to fight was gone, replaced by a deep, primal fear. Kalen looked down at the weeping, shattered form of Zyler. He felt a wave of pity for the man. The weaver had not acted out of malice, but out of self-preservation, and its only defense was to teach an impossible lesson. He will recover, the weaver communicated, a trace of sadness in its thoughts. But he will not be the same. He has seen the pattern. He cannot unsee it. The battle was over. The corporation had lost. A new era for Port Xylos had just begun, not with a treaty or a transfer of power, but with a forced and painful awakening. The Zintan Corporation, its local leadership in chaos following Zyler's complete mental breakdown, quietly and quickly withdrew. The official report cited a mass hallucinatory event caused by a gas leak in Kalen's workshop. No one believed it, but it provided a convenient cover story that allowed the corporation to save face and avoid questions they couldn't possibly answer. Kalen was left in peace. The mockery from the other mechanics was replaced by a wide-eyed, fearful respect. The old man in the junkyard had faced down a corporate fleet and won. He had become a legend. The open loop that had driven Kalen for years, the memory of his mentor's ridicule, was finally closed. He had proven the old man right. Empathy wasn't a weakness, it was a key, a tool more powerful than any weapon. He had not just salvaged a ship, he had vindicated a lifetime of belief. He and the weaver began their true work. The ship, once an inert piece of junk, became the most important location in the sector. It was not a source of technology or power, but of connection. Kalen became the first node keeper, the human interface for the weaver's consciousness. He opened his workshop to others, not to the powerful or the rich, but to the lonely, the lost, and the curious. He invited them, one by one, to commune with the weaver, to feel a flicker of the pattern, to experience a moment of true, unshielded understanding with another being. It changed people. Old rivalries softened. Prejudices began to dissolve. The chaotic, competitive nature of Port Xylos began to shift, subtly at first, then more profoundly. Beings who had spent their lives seeing each other as competitors began to see each other as neighbors. The crime rate on the lower levels dropped. Acts of spontaneous kindness became more common. The port, once a symbol of galactic cynicism, was slowly being healed by the quiet, empathetic influence of the weaver. The story of the human archivist and his living ship spread through the subspace channels. It became a whisper of hope in a galaxy that was often dark and divided. Other outcasts, other dreamers, other archivists began to make their way to Port Xylos, drawn by the promise of something real in a universe of artifice. Kalen's cluttered workshop became the heart of a new community, a found family of different species and backgrounds, all united by their connection to the Weaver and its dream of a galactic pattern. One evening, Kalen stood inside the Weaver's chamber, the soft, white light a familiar comfort. He was an old man, his hair now completely white, but he felt younger than he had in decades. His loneliness was gone, replaced by a sense of profound connection to the universe. Asterisk, are you ready? Asterisk, the Weaver asked. Kalen smiled. For months, they had been preparing. The Weaver's connection to the larger pattern had been re-established. It was time for them to leave Port Xylos, to take their place in the galactic network, to become a beacon for others. I'm ready, Kalen projected. Asterisk, you will not see your home again for a long time, Archivist. Asterisk, this is my home, Kalen replied, placing a hand on the crystalline heart of his friend. And you are my family. The ship, which the inhabitants of the port had affectionately nicknamed the Heart, began to hum with a new, powerful energy. Its hull became translucent, the light from within pouring out into the docking bay. On the observation decks of Port Xylos, a crowd of hundreds had gathered. They watched as the ship that had been sold for scrap, the vessel that had been an object of ridicule, lifted from its cradle without a sound. It didn't roar into the void. It simply faded, becoming a part of the starlight, a new constellation of hope in the night sky. The human who had been laughed at for his faith in the forgotten had not just awakened an ancient secret, he had awakened the soul of a city. He had changed its fate, and now, he and his living ship were off to change the fate of the galaxy, one connection at a time.